Hello, I thank you for taking the time to share these videos with us because we're now into the second part of a series dealing with the subject of parenting skills. Now the first part dealt with the idea of how husbands and wives should treat each other because indeed with that, while it's a concept of marriage, but that's what influences the children. And they see how mom and dad treat each other, it's an influence to them so that they know how they should treat one another, how they should relate to others. For instance, what children do is they learn in the concrete. In other words, in learning in the concrete, they learn by what they are able to visualize, what they can see. Okay? They also have fantastic memories. And so when they see this action that is positive, on the other hand, if they see mom and dad that are arguing all the time and fighting all the time and so forth, and raising their voice with each other, then what they're seeing is this is the way we act when we get angry, when we get upset. This is the right way to do it because they go by the example that they see. So we're going to share in this segment about anger management. The idea of slowing down your anger and controlling it before it controls you. Because again, the way you treat mom and your spouse is the way they see how mom and dad treat each other. And again, that's the way they're going to treat one another. So if we're talking discipline of children, we're talking parenting skills, we've got to model it. We've got to share it in such a way by what we do, what we say, how we relate to one another in the home. So right now, in this second segment, we're going to deal with the subject of anger management. Now, as we talk about anger management, we want to look at, first of all, the idea that anger is good. Okay? Shock you? Well, the truth is anger is good. The Bible teaches that we're to be angry and sin not. So why does God want me to be angry? God gave us these emotions. And so with that in mind, then, He wants me to be motivated by anger, not controlled by anger. Okay, it's a God-given emotion, so God thinks it's important for us. He wouldn't have told us that. By the second note, we also notice that while it is a powerful motivator to change things, we also note the difference is I need to control it before it controls me. When you talk of the fruit of the Spirit that's found in Galatians chapter 5 speaks of love, joy, meekness, gentleness, so forth. But there's one word in there that you need to focus on. It's called temperance, or the modern translation, self-control. Yes, He gave us an anger, but He doesn't want the anger to control us. He wants the anger to motivate us. And in so doing, then, we control the anger and find what we need to do to change the situation because we don't like a situation. It upsets us, so we want to change the situation. But the difference is I can't let the anger control me. Now, I'm going to go to this board behind me here, and I'm going to share with you a diagram of what happens when the anger takes over, okay? Now, again, we're looking at the human brain here, and I like to divide it into what I call areas of influence. This is by no means technical medical information, but what I'm saying is these are functions that the brain takes on and so forth, okay? I'm going to put an I in here. I standing for intellect. We have an intellect. An intellect makes me different in the animal world. I have a higher level of thinking. A deer hears a bang and a deer runs. I hear a bang and I want to think, what was that? Do I need to fix it? Do I need to be afraid of it? I can logically reason because I have a higher level of intellect. Now, there's another portion of my brain, and we're going to put an M in here. It has to do with memory skills. Okay? The ability to memorize things. Now, what's interesting, this is the learning process. Let me tell you about the learning process. It's called assimilation, okay? Anything that comes to my brain through my five senses, this light comes through my eyes, my senses of sight and so forth. And what you're hearing right now is my voice. And so that is a sense to you. Anything that comes to my brain through my five senses is a sensation. Okay? It's a sensation. Now, I have to put a perception on it. Okay? For instance, when I look at the lights around this room, I see there are lights, but wait a minute, I have to know what they are. And so what I do is I say, okay, they are lights. And I then put that into my memory. These are lights. Now, I learn a little bit more about these lights, and I keep putting my own perception on it, and then I tuck that into my memory. And the learning process keeps going as I learn more and more. Let me give you an example of this. A little baby sees a glowing candle. You know by the look on their face they're excited about it. It is something that's exciting to them, and they think fantastic, although they don't think of it in terminology, but that's exciting. You can tell by the looks on their face. Now, the next time you light the candle, the little baby unfortunately reaches out and touches it. Wow, that hurts. Now, they took that in their memory, okay? Now, let me ask you, what's going to happen the next time you light the candle? They're going to back away. A totally different look on their face, a look of fear. They're going to back away. And again, the hope is that eventually they'll learn that this is good when it's used properly and they can't touch it and all of this. But at the same token, we see that they keep putting those things into their memory. This is going to be important when we see what happens when anger takes over. Now, another portion of our brain, we're going to put MS, motor skills. You see, nothing happens in your body unless the brain sends a signal. The motor skills, the moving of the muscles of the body and so forth. Nothing will happen in your body unless the brain sends a signal. Okay? So with this in mind, when that little baby touched that flame, ouch! And brain is saying it's time to move it back, so forth. It didn't do it automatically. The brain sends a signal on all of this. And this is going to be important when we see what happens with anger. Now, another thing that we got to realize, there's a portion of my brain that has to do with my emotions. Okay? And what we have now discovered is that the emotions part of our brain can be so powerful it can override everything else. It can control everything else in my body. This is why my anger, number one, has to be vented. But we need to vent it in the right way. Let me show you what's going to happen when that anger takes over. Okay? So this happens with all emotions to one degree or another. So we're going to use anger, though. That's the one we're after. A-N-G-E-R. But wait a minute. Anger is a secondary emotion. Something triggers it. And what is that? Hurt. Okay? Anger starts with a hurt. That could be anything from you said something to hurt my feelings, or I hit my thumb with a hammer, and it's like, okay, the anger is there. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong yet. What the difference is, it's all right to be angry, but what I do with that anger is what makes a difference. And that's the part we've got to watch out for. Well, what happens when the anger takes over? Okay? When the anger takes over, the first part that it takes over is my intellect. My ability to reason and use logic. Remember I said we have a higher level of thinking than the deer? Well, when that anger takes over my intellect, I think just like the deer. I react. Okay? Now, remember it started with a hurt. So my reaction is based upon this philosophy. I hurt, want you to hurt. I say hurting things, I do hurting things. It's all about hurting because I'm hurting and I want somebody else to hurt. Doesn't have to be any reason or logic to it. Doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't make sense because I'm not using my intellect. My intellect is what makes sense, but I'm not using the intellect. I'm thinking with my emotions. Now let me add something to you there. The whole idea is that anytime I let my emotions do my thinking for me, I'm going to have a problem. Even the positive emotion of love. How many times you've been in a situation where you were motivated by the idea of doing something good for someone and it didn't work out right, and it's like, wow, what was I thinking? Okay? We were given an intellect for a reason. And that's going to be very important in managing this anger. But right now, the anger's taken over my ability to think. And so it's all I want now is I hurt, want you to hurt. I'm going to say those hurting things, and it doesn't matter. Now, we're going to go down to our memory. Remember what we've got stored in a memory, the learning process? Let me share with you an example that I ran into. Some time ago, I was counseling with a couple, and all of a sudden, they were just tearing into each other. It's like, you did this, yeah, but that's because you did this, and back and forth. Now, I knew the couple, and I knew there was a lot of positive things in their life that they had shared with us and all of this. But at this time, they were angry about something, and they just tore into each other. Now, I just sat there and watched for 30 minutes, or even better, I think. But I just sat there and watched. Not going to interrupt it. I'm learning from what they're sharing and so forth. That's another picture, is when that anger takes over, you don't realize what message you're sending to all those around you. Okay? While indeed it's taking over, you're not thinking through, and so you don't know who all you're hurting. I want you to hurt, but we wind up hurting so many others. This is why we say, with regards to the children and so forth, parents arguing and fighting amongst themselves with their anger out of control, the children feel the effects of it. And indeed, we need to control ourselves if we're going to help them control themselves. As a matter of fact, in another segment, we're going to talk about how to manage the children's anger. And I'm telling you this right now, the first rule, we've got 13 rules for managing children's anger and helping them manage it. And the number one rule is show them, don't tell them. In other words, I got to take control of this myself and show them how to vent it in a positive way if I'm going to ask them to do that. Okay, so it's got into my memory. Well, what's interesting is this couple, and they're arguing back and forth. If they had taken one moment to stop and think of the good things. But wait a minute, anger has taken over the memory. It's I hurt, want you to hurt. So we only think of the bad things. We keep bringing up the bad. How many times have you seen that argument where you bring up things that have happened years ago and we just bring up the bad and so forth? And the bottom line with all of that is that, wait a minute, that's what's happening. Anger took over my memory and I can't think of the good things. Matter of fact, I shared with that couple, well, I think really you need to go home and find out why you want to be married to each other. Bottom line is take the time to stop and think. And when they do so, it's like, okay, we do want to be married. We do love each other. But right now, anger's taken over the memory. Now, we're going to go to the last part of that brain, the motor skills. Okay? Now you're going to know you're out of control. When that, again, the motor skills controls all of our body functions and so forth. And so with this, one of the things you're going to find out, the first thing that will happen when you get angry is your heart rate will pick up. Okay? If your heart rate picks up, then the blood circulates faster through the body. If that happens, it draws from the extremities and your hands get cold. Now, wait a minute, a message is going to go to my sweat glands and I'm going to start to perspire. Why am I perspiring if my hands are cold? Does this make sense? No, what we're saying is that this anger, this emotion is controlling the chemical flow of the brain. That's how your brain operates, chemical flow and electrical impulses. And so it takes over the chemical flow of the brain. With that in mind, another message is going to go to my adrenaline glands, and one of the most powerful drugs there is now in that blood that's circulating faster and faster in my body. Okay, so with this I've got a strength I do not know. I've often used the illustration of a documentary that I saw on television where this individual was on the scene of an accident and there was a pickup truck that a man was pinned under it and he wanted to help and his emotions were taking control of him and so forth, and he walked over and picked up the back end of that truck by himself so as to let the man get out from under it. Wow, he had a strength he didn't know. Now, I'm going to guess that he paid for that later in the hospital with his muscles and so forth, but at that point he had a strength he didn't know. Now, here I am angry, I've got a strength I don't know, and all I want to do is hurt. Wow, there's domestic violence. There's when I do something which I wish I hadn't done, but it's now too late. We need to be very cautious over the idea that when this anger takes over, it takes over the whole body. But we're not through yet. You see, anger is self-destructive. We need to get it out. We need to let it go. But we need to do so in a positive way. I was asking a group one time, and I was just throwing it out for the thoughts because I was going to go in that direction. And I said, well, what do you do with that anger? And one person said, bottle it up. No way. Bottling it up causes all this. Oh, and we're not done with this functions of the body. Another thing that will happen is your kidneys will function more. Your digestive system will be out of whack. Your liver will produce more cholesterol. Your body is out of control. You need to realize with all of this then that it is taking over, and so if you bottle it up, this is still going to happen. Okay, we didn't hurt someone else, so we don't feel embarrassed by it and so forth. But on the other hand, we have destroyed ourselves, or are in the process of destroying ourselves if we don't let it go. We got to let it go in a positive way. Now let's talk about the idea of getting even with someone. Okay. in this picture, what I look at is how do I know I've gotten even with someone? It's I hurt when you'd hurt, but how do I know they're hurting more than me? And indeed, is that what I really want, for someone to be hurting more than me? You see, if I'm not thinking clearly, then I'm not even able to realize how much I'm hurting. It's just a matter of I want to keep hurting someone else, and we don't even realize how we're doing it. Well, okay, we're going to get even. We're going to vent against them. Now let me share with you what happens, okay? Well, it starts off with an anger. Look at this cycle. It starts off with an anger. But now I've said things I wish I hadn't said. Now I'm feeling and struggling with this idea that, I said it, I got even with him, but I don't even know what good it did and all of that. So now I'm embarrassed. And then I feel guilty. Okay? Oh, I wish I hadn't said that. It's too late now. I can't take these words back. And that's one thing about venting words. With anger, you can't take them back later. Even if someone understands it, you can't take the hurt back. So with this, then, I've got the embarrassment and the guilt. You know what I've just done? The two greatest deterrents to good self-esteem, the two greatest deterrents to feeling good about who I am is shame and guilt. Okay? So now I've just destroyed my own self-esteem. So I've done more damage to myself than the other person has done. This is what happens when the anger takes over. I've done more damage to myself now because I've destroyed my own self-esteem. Should I flip the coin on this for a moment? One of the most powerful feelings of good self-esteem, of feeling good about myself, is when I can look at that person who is trying to push my buttons and I can say, you're not going to go there with me. I'm not going to give in to that. I'm in control of me. You see, sometimes when people get this anger taking over, this intellect is so confused. It's like, well, I got to defend myself. I can't look like a weakling. I'm sorry, but the strongest person that I know is the person who holds back when it comes time to getting even. The person who refuses to act in the same way. The person who refuses to let someone else control them. You see, at this point then, they're in control. You just gave control over to them. And it's like that's self-destructive too. So we want to talk about eventually the idea of how to slow that anger with others without getting into the same problem with them, without causing it to escalate and so forth. Well, with all of this in mind, we've got a question to ask. What's the answer to all of this? Okay, here's the destructive picture, but what's the answer? What can I do to stop it? So I'm going to give you the cue, okay? It's I over E. I over E is the answer to all of it. Intellect over emotions. Intellect over emotions. You see, if I put my intellect to work, the emotions slow down. If I stop and think and put the intellect to work, the emotions will slow down. Well, let's think about that for just a moment. How can I put my intellect to work? Okay, I'm going to share something with you. This is our outline for the seminars that we've been teaching on anger management. But I want to share something with you that is of great importance. And again, if you need to watch this program over and over again to get this down, fine. If you need to pause and write them down, fine. Or you can do it yourself. You'll understand that in a moment or so. Okay, the best way that I know to make myself stop and think, and that's all I got to do. I've got to stop and think, because the thinking slows the emotions down. So I need to stop and think. How do you do that? Answer questions. Okay, one of the things that I propose, and if you want to contact us, we can give you a list of questions. On the other hand, you can create your own. But I'm going to read some of those questions that we share with our seminar people. Okay, number one, there's one rule in all of this. Number one, I cannot respond to my anger until I've answered these questions. That's no big deal. You don't have to memorize the questions. You need to have them written down. Put them in your computer. Put them someplace where they're handy for you. I can't answer or can't respond. I can't respond until I've answered these questions. So here's question number one. What am I feeling right now? Now think of the potential. You've got hurt, embarrassment, betrayed, sad, confused, angry, anxious, frightened. What is the feeling? Or something that you alone will know about. Something that you has really pushed the button, and now when you see that, you're relating to it and know that, okay, this is what I'm feeling right now. So the first question, what am I feeling right now? Question number 2, who or what is making me feel this way? Okay, now with this one, I suggest that you be specific. Why so? 2 reasons. Being specific means then that I will have an idea of what just happened. What just took place. I'm talking about not the person alone, but the circumstance. So when I say who and or what, the whole idea is what just happened. If we're talking the person, but what did the person do to do this? And it's not about a blaming game. It's about finding out about my feelings. You see, the anger makes me want to hurt. When I'm hurting, wants me to blame. No, it's not about blaming. It's about finding out what I'm feeling and what was this experience. What has it done to me? And so forth. So, who or what? Question number 2, who or what is making me feel this way? Number 3, what was said or done to make me feel this way? Okay, write it down and be specific. What was said or done to make me feel this way? Now, why do we want that? For 2 reasons. Number 1, if you're going to resolve this, you need to talk about it. Right now, you don't need to talk about it because it's I hurt, want you to hurt, and it's like, no, we're not in control right now. And what we've got to do is answer these questions to help bring ourselves in control so that we don't vent the wrong way. We don't bring the hurt onto the other person. So with this in mind, then, we ask this question, who or what is making me feel this way? What was said or done, being specific to make me feel this way? Now, you want to write that down so you can talk about it later. Right. Write it down so you can talk about it later. Now, that's one reason why you want to write it down and go to details. Be specific. Now, a second reason for being specific is you got to write this out. Now, what am I doing? I'm thinking, what just happened? What was the real circumstance? I'm thinking how to spell, because when you write, you think spelling and so forth. And how do I make sense out of this? You write it down. And all of the time, you're thinking spelling, you're thinking details, you're thinking, and what happens when you're thinking? The emotions are slowing down. You're taking control of them before they take control of you. Remember, before I respond to my anger, I've got to answer these questions. Let's look at another one. Is any of these feelings my fault? What if I never told the person this bothers me? Is it their fault? If I never said, maybe this is something my fault, or maybe this is something that happened in my past. And in my past, I have to come to the place I never dealt with that. And so someone says this, and I get the flashbacks on the past, and so there's where the hurt takes over. Okay, so we ask the question, is any of these feelings my fault? Think about it now, because the more you're thinking, the more you're putting yourself in a position to think maybe it's your fault, you're taking more control over the emotions. The next one, number 5, does the other party know how I am feeling right now? Okay, now when I vent the anger, if I vent it in the wrong way, they don't really know how I'm feeling, because what they're doing is hurting. You hurt them because they hurt you. And so it's not about understanding what you're going through, understanding your feelings. It's not about that at all. It's about them now wanting to defend themselves. And here's where the escalation takes place. So before I respond to that anger, I need to ask myself, do they really know what I'm feeling? Okay, and if I start exploring, is this my fault? Maybe there's something I didn't share, so I need to put the 2 together so I can share it with them so they can know what I'm feeling, rather than try to defend themselves because I'm venting that anger against them. Okay, let's go on. Number 6, what would be the best way to let the other party know about my feelings? Now that's going to take some thinking. I need to let them know so this won't keep happening. But what would be the best way for me to let them know? How could I get it to them without hurting their feelings? Again, I don't want them to hurt. I want to slow this down, take control of this, so I don't want them to hurt. So what would be the best way to let them know what I'm feeling right now? Think about it, and think about ways, different ways, scenarios that you can use to share the facts with them. Number 7, what might be the outcome of my telling the other party in this way? Okay? So how are they going to respond? I want to make it the best, but I want to try to anticipate how they're going to respond. Now, again, one of the things that we want to note here is when we share this, when we share this material with them, when we share these ideas with them, they need to be in control of their emotions and I need to be in control of mine. That's why I take the time to answer these questions and I write down the answers, because I don't want to go back and think, well, you said this, you did this, and we're now condemning the person rather than talking about the problem. Okay, so with this in mind then, I've got to be in control of my emotions. They need to be in control of their emotions. Okay, let me go on to the next. What positive thing could I say to the other party when I'm ready to talk about my feelings and the cause? Okay, what positive thing? In a moment we're going to talk about when and how to confront. Okay, what positive thing can I say? You see, in the concept of saying positive things, if I start out with a negative, I don't like what you just said to me, you're going to put up a wall of defense. On the other hand, if I started out by saying, you've got so many good ideas, I really appreciate how you think of me and how you care about me and all of this, but something was said the other day and I just want to know, and not again, you said something, no, something was said the other day and I just need to share it with you. I want you to understand me and I want to understand you. You see, when it comes to sharing this, there's only two reasons: to understand and be understood. That's the only two reasons for communication. It's not about hurting. It's not about getting even. It's about understanding and being understood. So when you answer these questions, you get a better picture of understanding yourself. And so with that then, what positive thing could I share to let them know I really want them to understand what I'm going through? I don't just want them to hurt. Next question, is my sharing of these feelings for the purpose of hurting or to understand and be understood? If I still want to hurt, it's not time. Not time to share, because that anger is still taking over, and if they respond in an anger and so forth, it's only going to escalate. So I need to take the time to answer these questions. That's the first thing. Answer these questions to slow it down. Now, if we're talking a couple, how about we get a signal? I had one couple that would raise their finger and each one would go their separate ways and write a letter to each other. Well, that's the next thing I want to talk about. Let's say we get down to number 9 and we're still not over the hurt part. We're still not wanting to understand and so forth. Well, with that be in mind, I want you to do this. I want you to sit down and share 5 positive things you can do. You see, you're the only one that knows what you can do by positive things, venting and so forth. This couple that I was telling you about raised their finger. They went their separate ways and wrote a letter to each other. Now that's important, because you're going back to the writing, just as you're answering the questions. You're going back to the writing and you write it out and you write it over and over, reread it and rewrite it till it's really what you want to say. Okay, so many times in anger we come back and say, well, I didn't want to say that. It's too late, you already said it. So you read it and write it and read it over till you really want it to say. Now, if you want to give them the letter, and it's always better to talk with them once you're under control, but if you want to give them the letter, always make sure after you've written the final copy, you ask, how will they feel? I don't want to hurt. How will they feel? Will they feel hurt by this? So forth. So be very careful about that. Really, the best way is after both of you calm down to sit down and talk about what just happened and so forth. We'll get to that in just a moment. So, but the concept then is 5 positive things that you can do. And write them down. I want 5, because the problem with that is that if you can't do this one, well then what am I going to do? Well, okay, take this one or this one or this one. And of course, the number 1 is says, excuse me, I want to go answer my questions. If you're both working on this, you should understand it. And you need to give each other the space to do it. You need to give each other the space, saying, okay, you go to your room, I'll go to my room. We'll find our private place where we can sit down and answer the questions. Now, some people like to take a walk. That's fine, but don't throw out the questions. Take a walk with the questions with you. Think through it. Make notes on it. Go someplace and sit in the park bench and work through it. The atmosphere will change for you completely, and that's just what you need to do. So you do mowing the lawn, washing the dishes, and so forth. I can remember one day years ago I was upset with my daughter because I was going to take the whole family out to eat. But when my daughter got home from school, she went out and took a frozen pizza out of the freezer and stuck it in the oven, and there she was eating. Well, I come down and I could smell that aroma. I thought, oh, I'll lay down. It'll be an hour and a half or so before my wife got back. And so I'll lay down, I thought. Well, I could smell this aroma coming up the steps. And sure enough, I come down to find out what she did. Now, at that point, I think I told her, well, I was going to take you out to eat, and I was furious. I went back upstairs, and I tore into that house. I made the beds, picked up the dirty clothes. I ran the vacuum upstairs and down. And I can still remember to this day running the vacuum under the living room couch and thinking, you didn't tell her we were going out to eat. It was going to be a surprise. It's not her fault, it's my fault. I can still remember that. Now, what was interesting is I apologized to my daughter because I didn't say anything that was negative. I didn't have to take bad words back or anything like that, or hurtful words. I didn't have to take that back. I didn't do that. But I know she felt the tension and so forth. But what was interesting, when my wife come home, you know, when you run a vacuum over a thick pile rug, you got all these tracks in there, okay? When she comes home, she sees, oh, the rug has been vacuumed. Awesome. Now, I went out with the family to eat, and my daughter probably saved me some money because she wasn't that hungry. She had just eaten some pizza. But the bottom line with it is I found something that would make me stop and think in that vacuuming and so forth. And when I got done, I felt good about the outcome. So when we say 5 positive things, this is what we want to say to you. Something that you will feel good when you're done. As compared to this, I hurt, want you to hurt, and when you're done with the whole picture, it makes you so painful. You're back to the idea of your embarrassment and your guilt and your low self-esteem because you didn't want to do that. You've got a constant reminder then of how to patch this up and so forth. As a huge reminder of your failures because you didn't bring it under control. So make a list of 5 positive things that you feel good about when you have got done with it and accomplished with it, and things that will help you understand the spouse. You see, anger vented in a positive way can be a tremendous blessing to a relationship because it helps us to understand each other better. Helps us to realize that we've all got feelings and maybe even share some things of our past that we never shared before because that's what brings on the feelings. So very important that we use that anger to build a relationship, not destroy it. Now, I want to look at another segment here. How do I slow the anger of someone else? Okay? How do I slow the anger of someone else? Now, the first step I want to share with you there is develop positive listening skills. Okay? What does an angry person want the most? Someone to hear. Someone to listen to what they're saying. And so I need to develop positive listening skills. Now, with those positive listening skills, do not interrupt. When you're trying to tell me what's upsetting you and I interrupt, but what about this? Well, yeah, but what about that? Now, what am I telling you really? What I'm telling you is I'm more interested in what I've got to say than what you've got to say. So you don't interrupt. You listen. Okay, you focus. Okay, refocusing helps us to take control of our anger because we're back into the thinking mode. We're back using the intellect. The refocusing helps me think of what I want to ask about. So focus on the things that I can ask questions about so I can tell the person or send a message to them, I really am listening. Well, you said such and such, and what did you mean by that? Now, when I made the quote, I told them I'm listening. And if I don't understand it, I need to have them explain it to me, not me interpret it, well, is this what you meant? No. Have them tell me, what did you mean by this? These are the listening skills, okay? Focus on the things that you can agree with. That's interesting. Because one of the ways to slow down the anger of others is to be agreeable. So while you're venting on me and I'm just standing here listening to you, okay, yes, I hear that. Okay. And you said that they said, okay. But now, something said that, wow, I have to agree with you there. Nobody should ever treat you that way. I never should have done that. Or so-and-so never should have done that. When you're agreeing with them, what you're doing is you're disarming the person. Okay? You're letting the person know that they were right and you're not their enemy. You're listening to them. You're not their enemy. When that couple was doing that arguing in front of me, I wasn't going to interrupt. I didn't say anything until she finally, after they slowed everything down, says to me, well, what do you think? And so then I just shared the thoughts that I had. I shared what I was seeing and what my thoughts were. You need to go figure out why you want to be married. You need to go think this through because they weren't doing the thinking. The anger was. Okay? And focus on key statements that you can quote. Okay, this refocusing is using your intellect, helping you to take control of the anger. So as they're venting, be a listener. Just listen for things you want to ask questions about. Listen for things that you can agree with, and so forth. Now, again, this idea of being agreeable, but here's another one. Be apologetic. I'm sorry this happened to you. Now, if you did it, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was doing that. I didn't mean to do that to you. Okay, I was wrong. Be apologetic. They want someone to understand and to hear and to listen to them. They would like also someone to agree with them. And what you're really doing in this whole process, you're diffusing their anger. How can they stay angry with you if you're agreeing with them without being angry at themselves? Okay? Be genuine. And that means you really want to understand. Oh, I don't want this to blow out of proportion. I don't want this to ruin our relationship. So be willing to be genuine. I really do want to understand. Don't patronize them. I really want to understand what you're going through, what you're feeling. You see, in essence, if there's a couple watching us right now, you're going to try to use these tools, I hope. But with it, you need to be genuine in using them so that one say, well, you're just doing it because he told you this. No, you need to be genuine because you really want to understand. Approach the things that you do not agree with by asking questions. You're not about taking sides. Okay? It's not about taking sides. So it's not, well, I think they really meant this, or what I really meant was, no, ask questions like, well, I wasn't there. Is it possible that something else was happening that made them angry and you just got became the victim of it? I mean, it was wrong. It's not right for them to do that way, but is it possible their anger was someone else? And you, okay, so if there's something you don't agree with, approach that with questions, not with answers. Don't choose sides. Now, another value of approaching that with questions is if they come to the conclusion, they're more willing to accept it than if you told them what they need to think, than if you told them what it should be. No. Let them come to the conclusion, so put it in question form. Now, interesting, while you're focusing on all of these things, what are you doing? You're putting your intellect to work and slowing down your emotions. Your anger is coming down. It's coming down. Your emotions in the thing is coming down, and you're able to think more clearly. Use positive statements to help the person feel good about themselves. I'm glad we had this talk. It was so important that you felt good enough to share. I mean, I think that you really, well, you're upset, but I think at the same time, I feel good that you were willing to share that with me, that you had enough confidence and trust in me that you could share positive statements that makes them feel very good. Be appreciative. Thank you for sharing this with me. I wouldn't want to have to guess at what you were going through. I could see the hurt and so forth, and I wouldn't want to have to guess at what's wrong. Thank you so much for sharing it with me because I don't want this to hurt our relationship. Again, keep that in mind. Let me go over that again. Develop positive listening skills. Be agreeable. Be apologetic. Be genuine. Approach things that you do not agree with by asking questions. Use positive statements to help the person feel good about themselves. And be appreciative. Now, there's one other thing that I want to share in this segment here, and that is when and how to confront. When and how, okay? We've got this all under control now. We're in control of our emotions, control of our feelings, and so forth, and now it's time to talk about it. We need to sit down and talk. Now, when do you control? Or when do you share? When do you share? When do you confront? When everything is under control. When I'm in control of my emotions and when they're in control. You see, the angry person doesn't even want to listen. You can't reason with an angry person because their intellect is all struggling with these emotions. So we need to have both of us under control. Okay? And then when you know what you want to say. Now, what do I want to say? You see, when it's I hurt, want you to hurt, I don't even know what I want to say. I just want to hurt. But wait a minute, when you know what you want to say, what are we going to do? We're going to go back to that list of questions. Okay? You take that list of questions and use that for your tool. Okay? This is what I was feeling, and I just need for you to understand me, and I want to understand you. I don't want this to hurt our relationship. And so this is what I want. And you don't talk about the person. The next thing we want to talk about here is being specific. But wait a minute, let's look at when and how, okay? When you know what you want to say, when the problem threatens the relationship, okay, you don't bury it, you got to talk about it. If the relationship is threatened by it, you've got to talk about it. You want to save the relationship. If this is even something to do with work and you've got to save the relationship for those to get along at work and so forth, it's only about saving the relationship. You see, back then we're looking at the idea of understanding and being understood, not the idea of I want you to hurt. Okay, and then when you have earned the right to confront. Now in a husband and wife relationship, you've earned the right. But I don't have the right to walk up to a stranger and tell them I don't like the color of your tie, it offends me. Okay, so it's something that you earn the right because you've, first of all, one of the best ways that I know to earn the right is to respect. Okay, respect is not something that we demand, respect is something we've earned. And so when each of us in this relationship have earned the respect of each other, then we're sharing because we respect. We want to know because we respect the other person. Okay? Now another thing, the next thing, how to confront. How to confront. Always begin and end with positives. Always begin and end with positives. If I tell this person, you said this to me the other day and I didn't really like it and I want you to know, okay, now there goes the wall. We mentioned this earlier. There goes the wall. I don't know what you're going to tell me, but I'm going to tell you, and I'm already thinking what I want to share to you, which means I'm not really listening to you. What I found out is that people like to listen to positive things. So when I tell them, you know, I really appreciate you. You mean so much to me. Our relationship, the thoughts you've got are so important to me. I wouldn't be complete without you helping me and so forth. And so we start with that positive, but this happened the other day, and I just want to share with you, and again, the next thing we're going to say is be specific. Be specific. Not, you said you did, now I'm judging the person. No, okay, I really appreciate your thoughts and your ideas, but yesterday there was something that was said, and I just want to try to understand it better. And I need for you to understand me because I really appreciate, begin and end with positive, because I really appreciate our relationship and I don't want anything to hinder it. So you start with the positive. Now with that, I'm ready to listen. Now you're going to share with me what needs to be changed or addressed. And so I'm already listening, so I'm going to listen for it. And then I come back with another positive, and guess what I've just done? I built the person up so that in that, now if they vent on me the wrong way, whoa, where's this person that I really respect and that really respects me? Okay? So bottom line, set the tone for the whole thing by showing concepts of respect and care and the positive side. And then when you share it, be specific. Be specific. And then also share why you're confronting. I only want to share because I want to save this relationship, or I don't want this to hurt our communication. I want to resolve this so that there's no more pain. Share it, for not to get even, not to tell you I don't like what you're doing and all that. No, not that at all. Back then you're judging to the person. I'm only sharing it because I really appreciate our relationship and I want to understand and I want you to understand me too. Okay? So there's 4 ways then. Here's the 4th one. Leave the person feeling good about himself. Okay, remember this scenario of the low self-esteem? I'm glad we had this talk. I'm sorry I hurt you. But I'm glad you were willing to share it with me. Even this, I can understand your feelings. I can understand why, and I just want to tell you I'm sorry, but I really appreciate it. I'm glad you were willing to come to me with it and let me know what I did and what you're feeling and so forth. All of this then is all about coming in agreement, not building walls that we've got to climb over later. Dealing hurts that we cannot forget. You see, there's an old saying, sticks and stones break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That's a lie. That's a lie, because the negative things we say hurt. And sometimes I can heal from the broken bone, but the hurt may never heal. The hurt may always be there. The next time something happens to remind us of it, there comes the hurt again. So the concept is slow it all down, okay? Now I'm going to challenge you to take this video and this internet and revamp it and go back to the beginning and go over it again and again and again until you get all of it figured out. Because it's your relationship. It's you dealing with others. It's your own personal self that's going to take control. Can I share with you something that I did years ago? I wrote this. A lot of this material is out of a manual that I wrote, and I had someone ask me, "Have you got anything on anger management?" And he had a problem there, a pastor. So I ran the book over to him and gave it to him. Now, the person that needed it, I never met him. Don't even know who he is. Don't even have a name. But I was told 2 years later that this individual, the situation had unfolded so that there was a gun involved and so forth, and this individual was almost ready to shoot his wife. He stopped, put the gun down. If I'm not mistaken, I think I heard that the shot was fired, but nobody was hurt. There was an ongoing divorce, and they weren't able to resolve things, but there was an ongoing divorce. And the pastor said he was with that person in the courtroom, and he saw him sitting there with arms folded. When I know he wanted to jump over those chairs, but he was holding himself back. He was taking control of those emotions rather than let them take control of him. 2 years later, this fellow was in the city of Pittsburgh. And in Pittsburgh, he was living in an apartment where the person was putting cables through the apartment, and the guy slipped with a screwdriver and stuck it into his hand. And he really cut loose. You know, I hurt one, you'd have hurt, and just hit my thumb with a hammer and so forth. But this man then took that book. He still had that manual. He sat down for 40 minutes with that fellow trying to tell him how to manage his anger. I'm saying that I had nothing to do with that. All I did was give him the book. I'm saying that no one's going to control your anger for you. We're not going to do it at day one, and we're not going to do it in your home. You're the only one that can do it. But I'm going to give you this positive notation that says you can. You're the only one that can, and you can. And again, in relationships, you've got to realize the way you treat each other is going to be viewed by your children. What a difference it makes in their life if they can see mom and dad sitting down and talking things through. Well, this is it for now, and we're going to be sharing some more material on helping children manage anger. Okay, confrontation, how to confront, we've already mentioned, but conflict resolution, I'm sorry, that's what we're looking for. Conflict resolution. We've got a tool we're going to share, and this basically is one of the tools we'll share with you, that list of questions. And we've got a tool for conflict resolution, and we've got 13 basic rules for helping children manage anger. So please, plan to follow on in the rest of this. But take a moment now, stop and work through this and use it and put it to the advantage of learning how to use it as a tool. Thank you so much for giving us these moments. Goodbye now.